What's the most horrible thing you found out about someone after their death? I came home from my 12-hour shift eager as always to see our golden retriever Harper, but instead of hearing excited yips and happy feet, there was nothing but silence. My husband was sitting in our living room, still as a statue. He looked up at me with red-rimmed eyes and said, "Harper's gone, and before you ask, she's already been cremated." It felt like he'd punched me in the face. He pushed a euthanasia form across the table showing that he'd signed for the procedure that afternoon, right when I was in the middle of surgery and couldn't be reached. I screamed so hard my throat went raw, calling him a monster. How could he execute my dog? He knew she was the only reason I got out of bed some mornings, but he killed her anyway. Harper had gotten me through my mother's death and 2 miscarriages, and now she was just gone without even a chance to say goodbye. She was an innocent, perfect creature, and he'd killed her when he knew I was tied up and couldn't stop him. I screamed at him that he'd always been jealous of the bond I had with Harper, and the fact that she could make me feel better when he was too much of an impotent man-baby to support me. I grabbed a framed photo of us 3 at the beach and threw it at his head, missing but shattering glass across the hardwood floor where Harper used to sprawl out during dinner. He wouldn't even fight back or defend himself, which made me angrier. At least if he yelled, I could hate him properly instead of seeing him just stand there with his shoulders shaking. "You need to see the video from the pet camera before you say another word," my husband finally said. He had to practically pin me down and force me to look at his phone. Harper was in the backyard acting completely wrong, snapping at invisible threats and foaming at the mouth. She attacked our fence so viciously that blood streaked the whiteboards, then turned in circles, biting at her own legs with a savagery that made my medical training kick in immediately. My husband's voice broke as he explained that he'd called animal control first, but they said any dog showing those symptoms needed immediate euthanasia because rabies had been confirmed in 3 raccoons in our neighborhood that week. He'd tried calling me 17 times, but I don't get any service when I'm in surgery, so he had to make the choice alone. He'd begged them to wait for me, but they said they couldn't let Harper stay alive and potentially infect someone else. He admitted that he was relieved that I wouldn't get a chance to get close to her because he was so scared she would infect me. He'd rushed the cremation because the body was considered hazardous medical waste, and he didn't want me to see Harper in that state or risk exposure to infected tissue. The vet said if Harper bit you while you were trying to help her, you'd die. No one survives rabies. I remembered with horror that Harper had killed a raccoon 5 days ago in our backyard, and we'd laughed about our brave protector, never imagining the raccoon had been sick. That's when I realized that the man I'd been raging at was actually my hero. He'd saved me from either watching Harper die in agony and kept me from risking my own life in order to keep her comfortable. The rage drained out of me as I realized he'd taken on this traumatic burden alone to spare me from having to choose between my love for Harper and my safety, knowing I'd hate him for it but doing it anyway. My heart shattered thinking about him and Harper, my 2 favorite people in the world, suffering the worst day of their life while I was oblivious at work. We spent the next hour crying together while he told me how Harper had seemed confused but trusting when he brought her to the vet, and how he'd sung her favorite silly song while she passed. The vet had been crying too because she'd known Harper since she was a puppy, but she said my husband did the bravest and most loving thing possible under the circumstances. We were finally preparing to get up and go to bed when I noticed him staring at the ceiling fan like it was spinning too fast, blinking hard and rubbing his throat. I asked if he was okay, and he said, "The lights are giving me a migraine and my throat feels like I swallowed glass," he said, and my blood turned to ice. I thought about my husband alone with our rabid dog, and I just knew. I grabbed his left hand and found deep puncture wounds across his palm. I managed to choke out, "Did she bite you?" Full story on the channel below.